My passage in My Life in Hard Times is located on pages 8 and 10 in Chapter 1, The Night the Bed Fell. This scene paints a paradigmatic portrayal of the eccentricity of Thurber's life and the chaos that is characteristic of his family. Each of the characters in the episode has his or her own interpretation of events, which accentuates the chaotic milieu. Thurber embeds diction, actions, irony, and various techniques of humor within this passage to convey the overarching theme of chaos. The title is a catch-tale in itself by implying an awful ending. The chapter's opening line explicitly states, "The night the bed fell on my father," further compelling readers to assume the worst. The selected passage begins with Thurber's cousin Briggs blundering out of slumber and into consciousness, and is followed by numerous farcical incidents. Irony lies under this consciousness because, although Briggs is very much awake, he is not at all conscious of the actualities of the situation he has awakened into. Assuming he is suffocating, he pours camphor all over himself. Irony presents itself in the line, quote, "Briggs choked on the camphor like a drowning man, for he had almost succeeded in stopping his breath under the deluge of pungent spirits," end quote. Instead of having the desired effect of bringing him out, the camphor brings him closer to suffocation than he ever was. This blunder is immediately followed by a scene of slapstick, with Briggs leaping out of bed, groping for the window, and beating out the glass with his fist. The shattering of the glass is symbolic of the disassembly of the night's harmony. As glass breaks, chaos breaks loose in the Thurber household. The night is typically a symbol of peace and silence, as opposed to the life and bustle of the day. However, the Thurber family refutes this symbol and engages in a big commotion during the nighttime. This symbolic contradiction is a representation of precisely how unconventional this family is. At this point, Thurber at last feels his caught on top of him, but adds his own interpretation of the development and more confusion to the story. He thought he was entombed in a mine and yelled for the others to extricate him. The father's interpretation of events was that the house was on fire to perplex things even more, so he wails, "I'm coming." However, his wailing only augments the mother's belief that he is trapped under the bed, so she shouts, "He's dying." Further perplexing the situation is Briggs, who reassures her that he is all right. We can see that the progression of events is adding more and more misunderstanding, disorder, and mayhem to an accident, Thurber's bed toppling, that could have been perfectly ordinary. Thurber accumulates this vast amount of chaos by jumping from character to character, portraying their extremely distinct perspectives of the occurrence. In this passage, chaos as a theme and humor go hand in hand, complementary to one another. Chaos enhances the humor Thurber uses and projects the story in a fast-paced manner. In turn, humor contributes to the light-hearted and nonchalant tone of the passage as if to alleviate the ongoing chaos. It is when we first sense the humor in the passage that we realize perhaps Thurber's father had not been harmed by the bed. Now it is elucidated for readers that Thurber applies a bit of dark comedy by juxtaposing a morbid element, the bed's collapse on father, with many farcical elements, as previously noted. We should also note that each of the characters' distinct perspectives concern morbid matters, such as entombment in a mine, a fire, suffocation, and death by the collapse of a bed. Thurber implements these, juxtaposed with all the farce, to produce archetypal dark comedy. The author's diction accentuates the apparent chaos by using words that produce a disorderly racket. Examples are bawled, choked, banging, yelled, shouted, gasped, and wailed. The word shouting is repeated several times within these 30 lines. There isn't much dialogue in the passage, but all 6 lines of dialogue that there is end in exclamation points. Therefore, punctuation is effectively applied to amplify the noise in the scene. Thurber also implements onomatopoeia, including crash, tinkle, and bark, to amplify the effect. Furthermore, Thurber uses verbs like drowning, leaped, groped, beat, pursued, battering, and floundering to enhance the turmoil and confusion. In addition, adjectives like uncanny, perilous, nightmarish, frantic, mournful, and resigned intensify the effect of catch-tale on the readers. In My Life in Hard Times, the role of animals is to act as supplements to those bewildering involvements for which Thurber's family had a kind of unhappy genius. In this passage, the dog Rex is introduced to add more chaos into the progression. The disarray essentially snowballs. Quote, Roy and the dog were now up, the one shouting questions, the other one barking. End quote. Later, Rex tries to jump on Briggs, requiring Roy to have to throw him. Even though they already have a large household with all those family members, they are inclined to own a pet at all times. The number of dogs alone stand to be 55 or 56. The Thurber family might have, quote, a kind of unhappy genius, end quote, for tumultuous entanglements, but they are very much tolerant of such disorder and always emerge from them unscathed.